Hi, welcome to our latest bonus chat. This is from our pod recording looking back over Bristol Bears v Leinster. If you missed it, you'll find it on Apple, Spotify, and all the other usual places. Now, this is actually a topic I've wanted to harp on for a while now, but given the way the last three Champions Cup finals have gone, I realize that as a Leinster fan, it may seem like sour grapes. Yet, going by opinions I've seen expressed both in articles and social media, even outside the Leinster bubble, it could be said that in the eyes of the general rugby supporting public, the stars that are awarded for Champions Cup triumphs aren't shining as brightly now as they would have done a decade or so ago. Much of that has to do with things like arguments over who has control of the competition, the type of TV coverage, and in particular, the ever changing and ever confusing formats used to find a champion. Starting with yourself, Kieran, did the prestige which the trophy once had disappear along with the high no branding, or what else may have happened?
I mean, time between the kind of like I guess pretty much in the professional era from the 2000s right up until the last years of the Heineken Cup as it was the European Cup before it was the European Champions Cup, where it was the most prestigious competition, probably club competition in the world, potentially. Maybe that's a bit Eurocentric, but I'd say any club would have rather have won the European Cup than their league, whether that be the Celtic League from whatever it was called, the Premiership or the top 14. I think I wasn't I was too young to remember in the 90s. But it seems like it's Richard, what are you laughing at? I remember you on this one here, so it seemed to be a rough getting in, and not quite getting off the ground. But then from that stage of the 2000s, the great Toulouse teams, the great French teams who won it, Munster's triumphs in fairness as well. I think before Leinster had their golden age, Munster were kind of it seemed like a never-ending narrative. Will they ever get over the line? And they did twice, and then Leinster have that super run of 3 in 4 seasons, followed by a Challenge Cup, and that actually the fact that Leinster won the Challenge Cup and not the Champions, not the European Cup in 2013 shows just how difficult the competition was because Leinster, having won the previous two European Cups, weren't able to finish as top of the pool or one of the best runners up. So I think that was actually Claremont who we played this week who finished above us. But yeah, it used to be really prestigious. I kind of think around the time where Toulon were winning three in a row, I don't know, something just changed. It's just that, like you said, the shine went off the stars a little bit. It just wasn't as appealing a competition. I think part of that was all this, we have to change the competition, we have to change the format, we have to do all this. Like, I'd like to see a European Cup that's a proper European Cup. Look, there's probably no point. Like Black Line did well, of Georgia did well in the Challenge Cup. There's probably no point having a team like that in the Champions Cup because they just wouldn't be at that level yet. But I love the format of six pools of four, top 6 pools of 4, even the 5 pools of 4 wasn't too bad. But top teams go through, best runners up, everything has stakes. Now it's the format doesn't help because it's kind of like you can win one game and get through, and that's happened a couple of times. And that was the case when it was kind of two conferences as it was, and that's the case now. When it's 4 pools of 6, you can win one game and get into the last 16. You can basically win one game in the pool stage and go on to win the European Cup now, and that's not a great format. Elephant in the room is there's South African sides involved, and I think they should be involved because they're in the URC, they're in a league that plays in Europe. Um, but at the same time, that means clubs have to travel down the half a hemisphere, and in fairness, the South African teams also have to travel to Europe, so they also have to travel. So you could make the argument that the format maybe has to be adjusted for them, but like I don't know. I was trying to think of solutions for the format, and maybe qualifiers rather than having just the top eights in each league go through. But then it's a case of, well, where do you play these qualifiers? It's the calendar is so jam packed now that we can't go back to the 6 rounds of pool games, and we have to have this annoying last 16. That's kind of the European Cup quarterfinals used to be the best weekend of rugby in a season. because you'd have the eight of the top eight, at least 8 of the 10 top teams in Europe playing each other. But now you have this weird, messy last 16. Then you have our quarterfinals, which just has less stakes a week later, and it kind of doesn't get going until the semifinals. There's the odd game maybe, but it just feels like the stakes are much lower, and it might get to the stage where teams like if you offered Toulouse, La Rochelle, Stade Francais, if you offered them a top 14 or a Champions Cup, I wonder what they take. Um, if you offered I think Leinster, we won a fifth star at this stage just because it's been so long. But if in a couple of years' time you were saying, look, do you want to focus on the European Cup or the URC? Maybe it changes to URC. So, I think part of the issue, just to summarise, is for one thing, there's a lot less jeopardy in the pool stages. There was a time where really losing one game could put you out. Now, in case of winning one game could put you through. It's very easy for some teams, just being there is enough in terms of the money, and the format just it's unappealing. And to be honest, it's a lot of the time over the weekend it nearly felt like the European rugby equivalent of the autumn internationals, where we're just seeing a lot of random games and they're fun to watch, and it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of stakes. There wasn't a lot at stake. So yeah, look, it's not as prestigious for me, and I wouldn't necessarily, if Leinster won a URC rather than a European Cup this season, I wouldn't be disappointed. I wouldn't feel like that's a letdown. At the same time, though, I think you know if you have a real if teams don't have a realistic chance of winning it, they're probably not going to take the competition seriously. But once you get to that semi-final stage, it tends to be the four best teams. We saw it last year. Leinster and Toulouse were the best teams in Europe, but they were both really tripped up in the semi-finals. Leinster really tripped up very, very good Northampton. Then the final was a great game. So, it's just how do we get that excitement from that semi-finals and final stage into the quarterfinals, into the last 16? And maybe the answer to that is rather than the last 16, you make a kind of a playoff between, so you have the top four go through to the quarterfinals, and then a playoff between 8 to 12 the week before, something like that, rather than going into this last, or sorry, from 5 to 12, the next best teams, almost a quarterfinal playoff like the old Rugby World Cup. If you have to have that extra week of rugby, because to be honest, like the last 16 is a lot of the problem. But yeah, it's just it's turned into a bit of a mess, and it turned into a bit of a mess around the kind of rebranding. I think what sums it up for me is one of the first years where it was the Champions Cup. Um, it the final was going to be in Milan. Final had never been in Italy before. It was a new market. It was great. Italy are a Six Nations team. They should have a European Cup final. And then suddenly it's changed to Twickenham at the last minute to something to do with optimizing, maximizing ticket sales, and they have to end up giving loads of tickets away for free because no one wanted to go to the game. And I think that just sums it up. All this, it's kind of a tournament that's been made up by marketing people rather than rugby people. It seems like at this stage. So yeah, look, I think it's not as good as it used to be, but at the same time, I think a few tweaks and it could get back to those glory days. But yeah, the 2000s and 2010, the early 2010s seem a long time ago now at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex issue. I mean, when the game went pro in the mid 90s, they needed a competition, they needed a level of competition between the leagues and the Test rugby, and that's what they're going for. But of course, they're also going for a rugby version of the Champions League. I mean, I'm never a fan of just trying to copy what soccer does, but that's what they wanted. That's the model they were going for. I have a slightly different take on. I'm actually not that crazy about the old system. I think it was better, the six pools, but I was never a fan of just the way that the Six Nations is like right in the middle of the pool stages and the knockout stages. You've got a coach goes to a team that feels like they're going to win. They have a chance of winning the Champions Cup, and they have their squads and they get them through the pool stages, whatever the format is, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. And then they just lose their best players to the Six Nations and just hope they get them back. five traditional test matches in 7 weeks, and then you got to cobble your squad back together and play the knockout rounds. I was never a fan of that anyway. But that's the but I there's so many other factors to it. I mean, for me, it had its heyday in the early years because the competition was formed with an already established English league system and an already established French league system. And we all remember it took them a while to agree to join, as it was, because they were happy enough with their own competitions. But once they got in, their teams were winning it. You had Bath, Wasps, Toulouse, Leicester Tigers. They were winning it year in, year out. But then the unthinkable happened. Irish teams started winning it. Oh my God. What's going on here? Munster a couple, and then you have Leinster's heyday, and you've got like six Irish triumphs in something like 12 years or whatever way it worked out, up to from 2006 to 2018. And I just think, they weren't having that, and they've said that had to be changed. And it was the governance. The governance was based in Dublin, and there was a talk in the media for a couple of years. It went on and on and on. Eventually, there was an overhaul. They took it over. They moved it, to Switzerland, really. But it was really the Premiership and the top 14 were taking it over. And they tried to make it even more like the Champions League. They called it the Champions Cup. They called it, they went for music before the games, the way the Champions, they figured if we just change it, they changed the sponsorship model as well. They took the name Heineken out of it. They said that if we just do it the way soccer does it, the money will follow, but it's not the same thing. And it just, and now you get a situation where teams were going out of business in the Premiership, and they're down to just 10 teams, but still 8 of them get in. You finish 8th place in the Premiership and you're in the Champions Cup. Whereas if you're 8th in the URC, you're mid-table. It's uneven. It's clunky. And it's the Premiership and the top 14 that are responsible, as far as I know anyway, for this reduction in pool matches. We had 6 weekends before. It got cut to 4, and they sacrificed one of them for this last 16, like you say. They used to have a 2-leg. There was a 2-leg last 16 for a while, but they got rid of that. So it's just fewer match days. It's just messy. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to touch upon the format because I think you both covered it very, very well and very much at length. I suppose I can bring a fan perspective because the first match, the first finals weekend I went to was 2011. Yes, that one, where I thought I was dying at halftime and then thought I was in heaven by the full-time whistle. But before that, I'd obviously been watching it on television, so all the way back to the early noughties, unlike some people who are probably still wearing nappies.
I think I'm starting with level 6 now.
Listen, I'm an old bugger, okay, twice your age. So anyway, and I fell in love with that competition from the off, and from a supporter's perspective, it was fun. There was a lot of atmosphere in the build-up, there was an awful lot of engagement as between the organizers and the supporters. There was an awful lot for the supporters, but that started suddenly dying off, and bits and bobs started dying off. There was, I remember, fondly remember that there was always a meet the players section. You can go and meet with some players and get autographs. Either players who are injured or usually, but when else are you going to have the opportunity to have albeit brief chat with some of the guys you see on telly and you think are superstars? And that's gone for a start. There was no engagement with grassroots rugby, promoting grassroots rugby. In fact, the last time I saw that was in Bilbao in 2018, when they had all the Basque teams They had a display for all of them in order to generate interest in rugby. So has it lost its luster? Definitely for me as a supporter, yes, because the supporter experience, has gone down the drain for me. And my wife and I religiously went to this. I didn't go last year. I'm not going this coming year either because it's in Cardiff. I shall probably go to Bilbao because Bilbao is a wonderful city and the food is awesome. So we've gone to finals where we weren't even close to getting to the final, just for the supporter experience and engaging with all the different sets of supporters, proudly wearing the Leinster shirt because that's what you did. Everyone who wasn't at the finals still wore their own team's colours, and there was this lovely atmosphere. That's gone. It really has gone. It's you just yes, we've all been to games. There's the usual banter between fans, but what there used to be this getting together of fans from different countries, from different leagues, that all that has gone. And as to the format, the last thing I will say about the format, I hate the round of 16. It really is bloody awful. They're just, I mean, the name says it, should say it. Like I jokingly said before, I'm 60. Okay. I support Liverpool, as you all know. I have supported them since I was about 8 or 9, whatever it is. In the European Cup was special. The Champions League is not. And this is the equivalent in rugby. The champions should have the champions. Of course, in rugby we only have 3 leagues, so it doesn't work out well. But at the very least, have the first 4 teams in the point well made by Jeff. How can a league that only has 10 teams, 8 of them qualify? That's ridiculous. Absolutely bloody ridiculous. It shouldn't be that way. It's the problem, quite simply, is money. They just want to make money. To them, it's a product, and bugger the supporters. It's the same as those matches you go to during Six Nations, where you get all these corporate boxers and all these corporate twats going to these rugby games, and they're the only ones who can get tickets because A, they're ridiculously expensive, and B, they have the influence. When the real rugby supporters don't get to watch those matches, the people who go to an Ashton Gate in the middle of February, the people who go to the RDS in the middle of March, the people who go to watch, to the Stade Chabam Delmain in the middle of France. Those guys don't get to go to see those big matches. It's people who never even go to, probably don't even know the bloody rules of rugby, and sadly that's what's happening to the Champions Cup in my own very humble opinion. It's lost its magic, I suppose. It really has.
Yeah, because I mean, we've been, as Leinster fans, we've been so kind of focused on this 5th star for the past 3 years, and we've just come so close that we'd want it now. But it's almost a case of, well, if we got it, like, would anyone else care? Do you know what I mean? It's like they might give it to us out of sympathy almost at this rate, because it's, I mean, no, it's just never, it's never sat well with me. I don't. You talk about the way that football has a Champions League, but football can run, because they play 2 matches a week and stuff. They can run 4 competitions throughout a season, starting, stopping, starting, stopping. I don't think that suits rugby at all. And you look at the Southern Hemisphere and the way they do it, and they have their Super Rugby. Once that season starts, okay, they have a little break for a test window, I think in July, but it's mostly the Super Rugby coaches. They get their squads and they're just playing Super Rugby until the competition's over, right until the final, or when their team gets knocked out. There's no URC 1 week. There's no Six Nations the next week. There's no attritional competitions back. The players not going back and forth to squads and having to remember calls and codes and stuff. You have your team. for the duration of the tournament, and then it's over. And I think that too gives a better spectacle for the fans. I do think they should work on getting more fans, real fans being able to go to the games. That's right. The corporate boxes, the prawn sandwich brigade, all that crack is going on for sure. But it's just a real mess.
Yeah.
At the moment, to be honest with you, and we as Leinster fans, like we say, we're so focused on getting that win that we might ignore that, because we're like, okay, we get this win, we just get into the last 16, whatever gets us to the final, and hopefully the star. But you want a competition that everybody's really going for, not just 2 or 3 teams. And like you say, they're qualifying properly as well, qualifying with a view to hoping to win it, rather than qualifying just to get a slice of the broadcasting pie. Which you got to wonder, if TNT gave it up to Premier Sports, is the interest really there to even cover it
Precisely.
at this stage? So you don't even know. Okay, well, that's brilliant, lads. Many thanks to Rich and Kieran for joining us. That was a great chat, and I hope to have you both on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Jeff.